in this lecture, we'll be focusing on construction reports. So we'll take a look at different types of reports and the constituents of the reports and so on. Like, so what are the contents in each report and something like that. So it'll be very difficult to elaborate everything in detail, but we'll just give you a brief overview of what are the different contents in given type of report, construction report especially, right? Right. So these are the important documentation in any construction thing. Right. So that includes the most important thing is called legal documents that is used to represent about the nature of the project as well as some of the clauses like in terms of contract or in terms of execution and so on, right? So these are legal documents, and there are different types of, you know, the construction documents or reports. One is the this is called preliminary project report, and it's also known as PPR. You should know these things before getting into real construction projects, because these are some of the building blocks for any project management or construction project management. So these are legal documents as well, like the clauses and something like stuffs that is put inside this has got a real meaning, right? Something like that. So next is can even talk about detailed project. Remember in the previous class, I mean the guest lecture, the external speaker talks about detailed project report, how this is generally done using BIM nowadays. Like, so all those things were explained in the guest lecture. But let me quickly, run through these things in detail, so that will be useful for you for the, not only for the academic purpose, but also in a real scenario. Like if you get into a construction company, and you should know these things. These are like fundamental things, and nobody's gonna explain you this. This is the thing that you should know, or you should know it by experience, or know it by dealing with this in a real time scenario, right? Something like that. But there's another thing is called feasible reports. Let me explain you, or I can put it in the point number 3. Or I can even call project feasibility report. It is also known as PFR, right? And it can be further classified into pre feasibility. That is something like, or you can even call pre and post feasibility. So which means that, like, before you take up a project, you will just do a basic survey of that particular project in terms of the location, in terms of the geographic condition, in terms of mobility or transfer of the requirements for the construction in that particular location, right? All those things comes under pre-feasibility report. And once you get the contract, then you can do a post feasibility report. So which means that whether that particular thing scenario happens, like for example, from the plan we get like 5 routes or roadways are available to transfer, but when you actually take up the construction, then you understand that only 2 of them are in operation, the other thing are not in operation. Like in that case, like it's just like a post feasibility. You just say that two, if that two is pretty you know um, uh, longer than the compared to the other routes, then it is something an extra burden to the project manager as well as the contractor. So in that case, the people can also look into the post feasibility report, or it is also known as built report. So this is a very, very interesting thing. Normally, in Western countries, in terms of developing countries, they'll have this as-built record, which means that during construction, they just create a record. So it is not only prior to the construction or once the construction is done. It is also done, documentation is done during as and when the particular entity is built or constructed. So that's what basically the as-built report or something. So these are some of the important things that you should know in terms of construction reports or reporting. It is basically, reports is a document and reporting is the process, right? So you should know this is one of the functions of management put forth earlier. Right. So first we'll take a look at the preliminary project report. So what are the things that will be in there in the preliminary project report? It includes. I'll just uh, I'll just put it in the bullet points so you can understand much better. It includes the nature of the project. What is that the intended construction project is all about, like if it is a bridge construction or it is just like residential building or even a component like the sewage tank residential building or in a commercial building. So that's the nature of the project, or you can even call that as type construction or components or even process. It includes construction, what type of construction process, right? So these are different things. That's the nature of the project. And then basically it is the the cost. Before that, it is just like the scope and background the project, like the area of construction, location, and other related fields and related details, like the local government and then like the authority for sanctioning and something like that, right? So that's the scope of the work. And very importantly is the cost. Talks about you can even talks about finance related stuff. Then we can talk about like banking, insurance, and very importantly, it is the uh, you know uh, the cost involved, or it is something called budget, right? So it's budget. So right. So these are the major factors that are present in the project. Talks about this. So why preliminary project report is that it will give you a sense of that particular construction before it is actually taken or a serious thought is put on in the getting the project or something like that. So it's just like preliminary thing, just like the trials or rehearsal kind of thing, right? So this, but do not get carried away by its significance. The reason is that even though it's a it's just a preliminary, but it will give you a real sense like to the company whether to take up the project or something like that, right? So that's basically this stuff. Let's take some example. One is like construction of a residential building. When you were in charge in a company to estimate or just to prepare a preliminary project report, you'll see the nature of the project. It's a residential building, and then it is a reinforced concrete building, and the number of story, and you can see the location. It is in the heart of city or its outskirts of city, or the accessibility of the available raw materials for construction. How far it is there from the location to the, I mean, from the shop or from the factory to the location, and so on. So those kind of things can be comes under the nature of the project. But however, scope and background talks about like what exactly the things are, like the specifications. But you cannot call that here in preliminary project report as specifications. But instead, these are something like standards or like metrics or something like one is like what type of building you are doing, like RCC building, number of story, and then the plan, the other related steps. Like here, you can even put the plan, preliminary, design, something like that. Right? So, and other related stuffs. And it can also looks into the planning, but not a work breakdown structure like planning, but a preliminary planning. So you can put in preliminary planning. And then very important thing here is cost, or it is the budget. So the amount, the finance, or the insurance, or all the other related stuffs you need to estimate. Say for example, it also looks into the cost or budgeting of both the materials or uh, labors and so on. To put in a nutshell, all these things are resources, right? So budgeting and all these things are resources, right? Something like that. So this is something pretty interesting thing that you should really note down in the preliminary project report, right? And nature of projects looks into all the stakeholders, the people involved and personnel involved, and so on and so on. So this also are pretty much important. Like to whom you are constructing. Are you constructing to a are you taking up a project from a very reputed firm, or the not so popular company or something like that, or popular client or something like that? So that kind of things comes under the nature of the project, or something like that. They probably like this is something like an evaluation where each company does. Like for example, if a good firm takes up a project from a client who is also reputed, then there won't be much issue in terms of the cost, billing and sanctioning and all. But if the company itself is pretty new, the client itself is pretty new, not many bigger companies quote for that because they might be inexperienced and they don't, comply with the payment schemes and something like that. And there will be a controversy, or it could be, misunderstanding among the companies. So generally, they prefer experienced clients or something like that who have good financial, or who have sound financial backup or something like that, so that like they can take up this. It's not only consuming time for the contractors, but also for the client to repay them periodically and something like that. If there is any hindrance in terms of repaying or sanctioning, then that will obviously affect the entire project, and then it will be a disaster. It will be a waste of time for both contractor as well as the client. Something like that. So these things are preliminary project report, but this is just to initiate a project. Not This is not a document that is used for submitting for the bidding or something. This is just to understand the holistic perspective of the project, the intended project, right? Something like that. Next, what we do is we will be taking a look at the detailed project report. So this includes all the thing that includes in preliminary project report. In addition to that, there are other features like in addition to that, there are other features just like uh, stakeholders coordination, and you can even call stakeholders coordination, and you can even call one point contact from the client and the contractor and something like that. So all those things also matters. And factual details that includes obligations, special conditions of contract. Let me first write down the points, then we'll discuss what are the things that are predominantly found in this thing, right? And then like scheme of progress that includes time schedule, like how it is done or something like that, and payment schedule, that includes uh, financing structure, and then earned value management. So this is called controlling. And then finally, it's pretty important. It is the commissioning operation, right? So these things will be there. So known as span of control. Of figures. Then it's very important thing is like so in addition to the preliminary project report, we'll be taking a look at the other related stuff like stakeholders, coordination, communication. This is also known as span of control. Remember that we have done in module number 1. It is the people respond to or people work under a particular manager or report to a particular manager or something. So that's called span of control. Similarly, like how the coordination and communication will be among the stakeholders and we can even write with personnel, something like that. So this is very important. Um, in fact, many problem there are different research happened in late 1990s where the communication gap between stakeholders and contractors were pretty high. So and they have also looked into how that affects the overall project or profitability of the construction company itself, right? So communication, the first and foremost important thing is communication. I'll highlight this. So if this is proper, and the anything that happens after that will be proper. So there is a saying in English called work done is uh, work planned is work done or something like that. Right. So basically, it is just like good communication without any misunderstanding can lead to a greater level of confidence as well as the ability to do something like that. Right. Then contractual details that includes the obligations, the special conditions of contracts, all those things. Like we talk about, general conditions of contract. We talked about these in much detail in invitation for bid, right? So if you want, you can take a look at that in much detail about the contractual details. So this is the hard piece in the detailed project report. It talks about type of contract and subcontracting, or it is also known as sometimes it is outsourcing. And in that case, we'll be taking a look at contractors, subcontractors, scope of work, something like that. So these things comes under contractual details. Like people talk about all these things in much detail, right? So this is a part which is very important. And next to that is scheme of progress. So this is a new term. So this is a new concept that we have not discussed earlier. We had discussed about time schedule. We talk about construction scheduling and so on, but we have not talked about scheme of progress. Like it is like a schematic view of the different stages or something like that. In fact, we talked about work breakdown structure, and we talked about construction scheduling, which is adding work breakdown structure with the time frame. But we never talked about the time scheme of progress. Let me give you an example. Maybe I'll just quickly run through this to understand much better. Right, say I'll just put all things, or else I'll put it in the form of table. Right, so the first I can put serial number, then I can put nature of work, then time starts and time due, which is completion time. You can put it this way, right? All right. So first thing we talk about is the earth work activation, right? So I can add one more stuff. Um, this is type of document excavation. You can even leave this for a moment, like we don't have to really do that. And it is preliminary project report. So if it is the preliminary project report, we talk about nature of this, then it is not required. The time starts and you something like that. Instead, here we can say it is 2 days, something like that. So this is something that we give it in a preliminary project report. But in a detailed project report, I'll just copy one more thing. So in a detailed project report, will be just a second. In a preliminary project report, we'll be looking into stuff that takes up 2 days time, something like an rough estimate or something. But in a detailed project report, we'll be taking a look at the description. This we also leave the description here. Say it starts today, 09 03 2021. Sorry, 22, and then it goes 2 days, means tomorrow, right? So 9 to 10 is one day, 10 to 11 is another day. So it's 10. So you can call 8 hours a day or something like that, 8 hours work duration. So in that case, we'll take 9 and 10, 0, 3, 4. Right. So this is what it is, in a preliminary difference between preliminary and detail. In addition to that, if you have a work schedule, like for example, this is just a construction schedule kind of thing. We'll have, let me put it this way. Not so I'll understand. All right. So here, this is what in a preliminary, but in a detailed project report, you see road number 2 or 1, so and so. So I'll just put so and so. And then you can see this is 09 03 022, and it ends here. And then we also have got same DPR, but you can even have an extra thing called this is just like 4 hours and requires 8 people, and to I'll just put equipment, so we don't have to really do equipment. And then a very important concept that we have not discussed earlier is called labor constant. So it's in British English, so it's reading wrong. It's called labor constant. So what does that mean? Is ability of labor who could be skilled or semi skilled Unskilled will not come here. Like skilled labor, skilled or semi-skilled labor to perform a task uh, per day in a standard 8 hours uh, duration. Duration with manual or manual dexter, dexterity, manual dexterity, or with equipment, right? So this is called labor constant. So which means that it is just telling uh, the standard. This is like soft science, right? So we're dealing with soft science or human behavior, right? So we cannot have like, for example, a machine can filter so much of water in a given time. So that's a machine ability. But human beings are different. Like they have range from laziest to the most shrewd and efficient person, right? So the level of work will be different, but there will be some standard or average time, so that should be met. So that is what called labor constant. Say for example, uh, for construction of 1 meter square or area, taken for 1 meter square area of concrete, sure, requires minimum of 3 people, uh, you know um, 3 people, and we can talk about for 1 meter square you can have like 8 hours per day, so something like that. So I'm just giving you a quick example of what is labor constant. So for construction of 1 meter square of area of concrete structure requires 3 people of 8 hours per day, right? So equals to 3 per 3 man hours. I mean 3 man per day, right? So this is what we known as 3 man day, right? So this is 8 hours per day. Say for example, if you wanted to do that in 4 hours, you add 6 people, and it is not per day; it will be per 4 hours. 6 man per 4 hours. So generally, to avoid these confusions, we will be generally giving it per 8 hours per day, something like that. 3 people. So it's a standard. It's a 3 man day. Remember, if you take up any internships, then you can probably see in the notice board they have written like 5 man day, 8 man day, 10 man day, which means that 10 people required for that particular job per day or 8 hours. Per day means 8 hours duration. If it is overtime, like a concreting 24 hours, 3 24 hours, it requires three threes and are 9, right? So 8 threes are 24, so 3 threes are 9, so 9. In that case, it is just 9 man per day, and here day represents 24 hours. Right? You don't have to really mention 24 hours a day, so it's 9 man day. So which means 9 people required, right? So something like that. So this is what generally in construction happens, right? So this is what we call labor constant. So we need to evaluate that, and then generally once we have man day, say for example 3 man per day, when we divide this, when we multiply this by duration, so we can even call labor constant equals to 3-man day, which is nothing but activity duration equals to labor constant into time. So, which means that this is 3-man day, and the activity, if it require, I mean, it's not activity duration, it's the number of resources equals to time, which is nothing but activity duration. Okay, you have 3-man labor constant, I mean 3-man day, and the time for completing, that is 1 day, then it is 3 into 1 is 3. So this is 1 by day. You can even call this as in 1 by day. And this duration, if you give it in day, so this day and this day get cancels each other. And then this day and this day get cancels. We'll be left with only man, which is the resource, the men required for this particular task. That is how they calculate detailed estimate or something like that. Right? So that's how they calculate here. It is like 8 people for 4 hours, something like that. That's how they calculate. Right. So this is DPR. Project report. Right. So next is the feasibility report. So feasibility report is whether it is generally a contractor or the person who takes up the project specific, whether it can be completed within the stipulated time. They look into all those things. Like they look into very importantly the time frame versus budget versus very important thing is the feasibility, whether the area is reachable or something like you can even call budget versus feasibility. It is just like giving, say for example, if I give you an assignment and I ask you to submit it by today, say a 20-page assignment which has to be written, handwritten or something, it'll be really difficult, or sometimes it'll be more impossible. Right, so those things are not feasible, right? So in that case, even you check your time frame available, and then the resources you use, like you have the particular you know description or the knowledge about the particular assignment and something like that, right? So, and then like you talk about feasibility, then you can even pretty much say it's feasible, slight, slightly feasible, and infeasible, right? So these three things are there pertaining to the feasibility. One is highly feasible, one is slightly feasible, or nearly it is just like uh, between feasible and infeasible, and then this is infeasible, totally not acceptable. Or this project, if the client takes up, then I mean, if you give a report like feasible, and then when your company takes up the project, and if they found it's infeasible in future, then it's a detrimental not only to you but also to the company, right? So in that case, that's why people generally look into feasibility report or value this in detail or more detail or something like that. Or sometimes you remember the two-stage contracting. In one example, we have got two-stage contracting, where in which uh, it's a large project, contains two segments, right? Two segment. In that case, one segment were done feasible and another segment is not feasible. then it will be better not to take up the second phase. Or if the client finds that like continuing the phase one contractor to phase two, if it is not feasible or it's detrimental, then you can stop and can ask the quotation for the second phase from a different source or different contractor, something like that. So these are different feasibility reports. It's done both in before taking up the project as well as in the post feasibility stage, like in this case, like two-stage contracting and something. So these are some of the important things that you should know before we get into the construction reports or reporting or something like that. Right. So in the next lecture, we'll be looking into the public-private partnership. Right. So that will be the final part of module number